good morning to another edition of the Star Good Morning Show here on Star Television. We broadcast live from our Media One Center 3 Mama Street Book Films in Freetown. My name is Abdul, Rahman, Kamara. Today being Thursday, 9th January 2020. Mr. Simon Mostert was appointed British High Commissioner to Sierra Leone in succession to Mr. Guy Warrington and took up full appointment in September 2019. Simon Mostert is my guest in the studio. He's here to talk to me on the first UK African Investment Summit to be held in London. Great to have you, sir, in the studio.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, 5 months since you succeeded Guy Warrington, how has your stay been like?
Well, it's been wonderful so far. It's been busy, challenging. I've had the good fortune to meet a wide range of Sierra Leonean people, from ministers to officials to the beautiful people of this great country in all walks of life. And I've tried my hardest to get out and about and see as much of the country as I possibly can and get a sense of its excitement and its challenges and its vision for the future. So first 5 months in, really enjoyable and loving my time here.
What was you envisaging before you come into Sierra Leone as to what the country is like?
It's a good question. A lot of people have asked me that. I think, like a lot of countries in West Africa and Africa at large, there's a great deal of ignorance. People don't really understand the culture, they don't understand the history, and they certainly don't understand the people. And I worked very hard. I was very fortunate in my previous job to be covering all of southern Central Africa for the Foreign Office in London, so I had a good sense of the region. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't know too much about life in Sierra Leone itself. So I obviously did my research, I spoke to people, I spent a lot of time. I was very lucky to see Guy as he moved on to his next role and speak to former ministers and contacts in London. But I expected a country pretty much like the one I found, one that's vibrant, one that is picking itself up after the challenges of Ebola, of the conflict in the last 20 years, had had a tough and demanding election campaign a year and a half, 2 years ago, but a country that felt as though it wanted to move forward and grip the 21st century and see economic growth and human development and see greater success. And that's the sense of energy I get living here.
Were you also encouraged by the fact that what Guy Warrington told you before his departure about what prevails in the country, understanding it better?
I think so. I mean,
Do
Guy...
you get a fair understanding as to what you anticipate in furtherance?
I think you get a certain degree of understanding speaking to your predecessors and to people who live outside of Sierra Leone, whether it's the diaspora in the UK or in Europe, whether it's media contacts like yourself and colleagues or academics. But frankly, the best way to learn about a country is living in it. The best way to learn about a country is to listen to its news, watch its TV, listen to its radio, listen to its music, appreciate its arts, and meet the people. And that's what I've been trying to do for the last 5 months, is get out and meet as many Sierra Leoneans as I possibly can and listen. I'm a guest in your country. I'm here at the invitation of your government, and I want to behave like a guest, like a partner, like a friend. And the best way to do that is to listen and to learn.
Okay, let's come to serious business. Mr. Mostert, we understand the UK is organising the first African Investment Summit to be held in London, January 20. What's the objective of the summit?
Well, it's a hugely important summit for the UK, and we hope for Africa. The objective is to basically get as many people in from not just Africa, but from the wider world, the wider international business community and investment community, and showcase Africa, showcase all that Africa has to offer in terms of investment opportunities, in terms of human capital, people, skills, business ideas, and potential for economic development, sustainable development, and green development. And we want to help our African partners, whether it's the president here in Sierra Leone or his colleagues in the region, showcase the very best that Africa has to offer and attract that much needed investment that we all want to see to promote economic growth in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Why Sierra Leone?
Why Sierra Leone? Well, Sierra Leone's invited for lots of reasons. One, because they're a friend and a partner. We've got a deep historic relationship with this country, as you know, going back many centuries. We share the vision of this government to sort of promote economic prosperity, to see sustained economic growth driven by the private sector, which is very much in line with the President's sort of national development plan. And we want this conference and this summit to be an opportunity for him and his African colleagues around the region to meet businesses, to meet investors and say, this is what Sierra Leone can do for you, this is what we have to offer.
Why is investment in Sierra Leone very much important for the UK?
I think for lots of reasons. I think we want, well, first of all, we're friends and partners. We want the best for our friends and partners. We want to help them and work with the government of Sierra Leone and the many people working in this country, in civil society and elsewhere, try and achieve greater opportunity and prosperity for all of the people in this country. We believe that the best way to do that is through sustained economic growth, and we believe one of the main drivers of that should be the private sector, should be non-government capital. We need to see a move away from development and donor dependency to private sector driven growth that is very much driven by businesses, by individuals, by SMEs, by innovation and creativity. And we want to see that across Sierra Leone, but also across the wider region, because we feel it's been a success for our economy in the last 20, 30 years, and we think it can be replicated here and elsewhere.
5 months, Mr. Mostert, since you replaced Guy Warrington, what are the key areas within the diplomatic and bilateral ties with Sierra Leone that you intend to actually achieve?
My role here is to maintain and strengthen the bilateral relationship in all of its facets, whether it's working on security issues together, whether it's working on governance issues together. As you know, we have a significant and very impressive development portfolio here headed up by DFID and partners that works very closely on health and education and business development. And so my role working with my colleagues at the High Commission and DFID and elsewhere is to sort of drive forward that work, working with the government but also with non-government partners, and building in that sense, as I said, of sustained development and growth we want to see in Sierra Leone in the future. My aspiration is for the relationship to build a strong partnership, and partnership is the key word, not dependency, partnership. We are and do treat our colleagues here as equals, as friends, as partners, and that involves us being honest in private and supportive in public to see economic growth and development potential realised in human and capital terms. And that's where this summit is hopefully going to play a very important sort of trigger point and sort of incentive to see that investment and development really accelerate throughout this year and into the next decade.
In your view, do you see a real shortfall in the country leveraging foreign direct investment in the country, that perhaps this summit could be of help to the country?
Well, I certainly hope the summit will be of help, because I think it will allow the government here and the president, who has confirmed he's going to attend the summit, which is really good news, and we're delighted about that, to listen firsthand to what investors want and what they like to see in a business environment when they're thinking about investment.
There has been so many investment summits held, even with the last administration. We've seen where former President Ernest Bai Koroma, when he assumed the mantle of leadership, the first conference that was held in London, we've seen where there are, implied expression of interest by investors to actually come in. With this one, what's the anticipated outcome of this UK summit in London on the country as a whole?
It's a really good question, and I think you're right. I think all journalists and observers are right to always ask the question, so what? Why is this going to be different from other conferences? And I think it's a fair challenge. My response to that would be twofold. One, I think as we enter this new decade, I think globally there's an acceptance that the potential in Africa is transformative. A huge sort of growth in population towards 2050, a massive sense that markets in Africa are growing in terms of the demand for a younger population, to internet access, to SMEs, to new innovative sort of modern services and a new service sector. Obviously there's an historic element around natural resources. You mentioned tourism in your last question. So I think there are lots of opportunities where external investors and foreign countries are looking at the potential to say there are going to be more customers in Africa, there's going to be bigger markets in Africa that we need to be tapping into in partnership with our African colleagues. So it feels like we're reaching a moment where there's a real sense of initiative. And I think it is driven very much by that younger population, that more dynamic population, that more interconnected population that sense a greater sort of degree of opportunity than perhaps you and I have had in our lifetime. I'll be honest with you as well, there is a domestic angle to this. You know, we've been going through a very interesting and challenging time politically in the last 3.5 years with Brexit, but we now have a new government, a government that is very much driven by its ethos of promoting private sector growth and economic growth with its partnerships in Africa. We have a Prime Minister who's passionate about Africa, and a range of cabinet ministers that have all been here and love Africa and see the potential. And we want the summit to use that energy as a springboard to get others to invest.
Going to the summit, the 20th of January, you've been the embodiment of the UK conscience in this country. What will you say to those who may want to put a question to you of what significance that we may want to come to Africa, specifically Sierra Leone, to actually invest? What will be your response?
I've been called many things in my time here, but never the conscience of Sierra Leone. So it's an interesting observation you make. My job is not to sort of sell Sierra Leone per se to investors. That's the job of the president and his team and the government and your wonderful people and media and everybody else. But if I was approached and asked about that, I would say I see a country with great potential. I see a country that has remained stable and peaceful despite huge challenges thrown at it in the last 2 decades. Real challenges around human capital, around its demography, around the resilience of its people and infrastructure. And what I see as we hit 2020 in a new decade is a country that's wanting to really step forward in the region and the world, a country that wants to see its economy grow, a country that wants to see its best for its people. We've talked a little bit about education access, health access. So this is a country and a people where there's a real sense of aspiration. And that's something you talked about, conscience and an emotional sort of a connection to a place. I feel a sense of aspiration in this country that I think can be tapped successfully with the help of foreign investment, but obviously just as importantly with the help of the people of Sierra Leone investing in themselves and promoting their own growth and development.
With me in the studio is the British High Commissioner of Sierra Leone, Mr. Simon Mustard. Quickly, what kind of support is Mali receiving from the UK in its efforts to achieve its development targets?
Well, we spend approximately £150 million a year here on our development programme, working across a range of sectors, but predominantly in health and education, human capital and the business environment. We also, as you know, have a deep-rooted defence and security relationship. So we work across a number of sectors. In fact, in the last decade, we've also been the second largest investor in this country. So we have a long track record of support and assistance to a number of governments and regimes in Sierra Leone. I think, back to the sort of summit and the wider investment point, we want to see that relationship continue to develop in the next few years, but very much shift towards being driven by greater external private sector investment. We want to see, we've done some really innovative work around clean energy, for example, in the last month. You would have seen the President in December opening up the new electricity grid in the rural areas, which is something that DFID and others have been heavily involved in. And we want to see that type of work develop much more as well. So, areas around, energy provision, around health and education will continue to be a huge focus of our effort here in the years to come, as well as developing human capital, of course.
Part of the UK's efforts in ensuring that corruption be eradicated in society, we've seen in the last administration and in continuation of these, the DFID, the outfit of the British government, invested a lot in the fight against corruption through No Pay No Bribe campaign. Has that, in your view, yielded the required dividend? And your impression about the fight against corruption?
I think you are right, and I welcome certainly media attention on corruption because I think it's a huge issue. I think it's a significant challenge, not just for Sierra Leone, although it is, but other countries in this region and in fact globally. The simple truth of the matter is corruption is fundamentally catastrophic for economic development. It does not benefit anybody in wider society, and it holds countries back from achieving their goals in terms of growth, in terms of human development, in terms of capital development. There is nothing good about corruption in any shape or form, whether it's low official level, senior official level, ministerial level, or indeed in the private sector. As you know, we are passionate about fighting corruption. As you rightly pointed out, DFID and others have invested lots of money. We've helped the creation of the Anti-Corruption Commission and the Anti-Corruption Courts, which are now up and running, and we continue to support them at a technical level. The important thing with corruption is it needs sustained political commitment to be tackled.
Have you taken the time off, Simon, since your arrival in the country to actually engage government officials, be it the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources, the Office of the President, the centrality of it all, the establishment of the Office of the Chief Minister? Have you spoken at length to ensure the significance or the viability of the establishment of the Office of the Chief Minister?
Yes, we spend, I'm very fortunate in my position to be able to have the time to speak to a range of ministers, whether it's His Excellency or the Chief Minister or ministers of the Cabinet. They have been very gracious and kind with their time in speaking to me. And we have conversations with all of them about where we can act as friends and partners to provide support, whether it's technical assistance, whether it's advice, and even where we disagree about things, which we often do. I'll obviously keep the content of those conversations private. I need to respect that privacy and the way we can talk as diplomats, as friends and international partners. But we talk all the time around a range of issues, whether it's economic growth, whether it's press freedom that you just mentioned, whether it's about the provision of healthcare, access of girls to education, the role of Sierra Leone in the region and its aspirations to send out more troops to do peacekeeping work, for example, a whole range of issues. And obviously in the last few weeks and months, we've been talking a great deal about the Africa Investment Summit and our aspirations for that. My job as a diplomat, as a British High Commissioner in this country, is to speak frankly in private to my colleagues in the Cabinet, whoever they may be. When I'm asked and when I'm solicited to review, I will give it and I'll be blunt and direct. But obviously in public I need to respect my position, I need to respect the fact that I'm a guest in this country, and I want to be as supportive as possible to the aspirations of this government, or indeed any government, or the opposition, or the media, or others, to see Sierra Leone prosper and grow and be a more stable society.
Your assessments about the role of the Sierra Leone military, especially enlisting themselves into a peace support operation. We recall a situation when the Leopard 1 was engaged in Somalia, not until the Ebola outbreak entered an appearance in our midst that particular mission was terminated. Now it is the ambition of the Sierra Leone military to get themselves enlisted in a peace support operation. What is the UK government doing with respect to helping them to realize that dream?
Well, first of all, I think the RSLAF and the overall military has done a fantastic job in the last 20 years. It's previously done peacekeeping operations with great credit. It obviously played a pivotal role in responding to the catastrophic Ebola outbreak and the range of natural disasters such as the mudslides in recent years. So I think you have an institution or a set of institutions there, and I do include the police in this as well, where Sierra Leoneans should be proud. And again, I look around the region, I look around Africa, I look around globally, and that is not always the case. People cannot always speak of their security institutions with pride. Can they be improved? Of course they can. Every security institution around the world, including British ones, are always looking to improve their delivery, their service, their connection with the people they are there to serve, and their links to politicians and others. And the RSLAF and the police are no exceptions to that. As you know, we've had a long history via IMAT and ISAT of targeted specific technical support and training. That has been continuing. This year we will be recalibrating our security footprint here and sort of focusing a little bit more on sort of the civilian side of things, but also changing our advice to be more political and advisory. And the footprint of ISAT will be changing a little bit. But that doesn't mean to say that we're not committed to a partnership. Our partnership here, of course, runs across many sectors, not just security.
Is the UK government pretty much worried about the geopolitical placement of the Chinese influence in Africa?
Really good question. It's a question we often talk about, and I know my Chinese colleague very well. He's a very impressive head of mission, and we see each other often. I think, as always, when you're dealing with international relations and your activities in a particular part of the world, there's a degree of competition. Let's not lie about that. China has, again, a very deep-rooted relationship with Sierra Leone, which we respect and we understand, and your government, of course, is entirely free to make its own friendships and build its own partnerships, as it rightly should. And my approach to this has been very simple. You know, I will always maintain a dialogue with my Chinese colleague and his team. We will look for areas where we have mutual interest. You know, obviously the Chinese are very heavily involved in infrastructure development. They have an aspiration, as we do, to see peace and stability, not just in Sierra Leone but in the wider region, and we share many interests on that front. But where we disagree, we will be very open about it. We have slightly different operating models. We are committed to see the economy grow through private sector growth, through individual drive and initiative and innovation and creativity, and perhaps our Chinese colleagues have a slightly different perception of that. And of course there are wider policy issues where we do disagree. Hong Kong is an obvious example, and perhaps some of our involvement in Southeast Asia and the Pacific where there are disagreements. But we can do that as sovereign nations, we do that in the United Nations, we do that in our bilateral engagement. But here in Sierra Leone, I see just as much area of shared interest and mutual support than I do disagreement.
Tell me, who are the attendees for the London Summit in January 20?
Well,
specifically the government of Sierra Leone, or you expect other bodies to actually have a chance to attend?
Well, we're expecting a really good attendance. I can't speak on behalf of the President and the team he's taking. I'm sure he'll be announcing that in short order, so I don't want to prejudge that or second guess it. I'm sure he'll be taking a very high-powered and impressive team, as he often does when he's going off to promote Sierra Leone overseas, which is something he's deeply passionate about. We have, I think, 17 heads of government have confirmed. We are hoping one or two more will attend. We've still got another week to go. But they include obviously the presidents of Kenya, of Tanzania, of Nigeria, and South Africa, amongst others. So it'll be a wide range of countries from across the entire continent. We think it's a really impressive show of interest. Again, I think people are very keen to see the sort of that sense of people looking back into Africa for investment opportunities. I think there's a real sense of energy globally now that Africa is a continent of opportunity and hope and aspiration, and we're hoping that the summit will reflect this. And you know, I've mentioned things, for example, around clean energy. You know, some of the innovative work that Sierra Leone is taking. For example, the president will be speaking in a panel of renewable energy. So it's a chance for smaller countries to showcase their innovation and what can be done, even with limited support, and you know, hopefully that'll resonate with some of our bigger partners in the region.
On the issue of climate change, perhaps Sierra Leone might not be a very huge contributor to the upcoming challenge in climate change, but the country is pretty much committed to addressing some of those challenges. I understand there is a national adaptation plan to actually mitigate the impact of climate change. But there is a looming challenge of deforestation. When you look around the Freedom capital, so many trips have been, the tree covers are gone and all the rest of it. Yet to wonder that we experience a mudslide and flash floods. Are you in any position to actually advise the government of Sierra Leone to ensure compliance?
Well, it's an interesting point, isn't it? Because I think, you know, when it comes to sort of net emitters and contributors to global warming, and you know, all of the scientific evidence is pointing us towards that, and frankly all of the physical evidence, the real evidence. You talked about the real examples this country has suffered in recent years, the mudslides, the rather odd weather patterns, the slightly longer rainy seasons and the slightly drier dry seasons, and so on and so forth. Sierra Leone is a country that is already right now feeling the impact of climate change. And you talked a little bit there as well about some of the activities around economic growth and deforestation and sort of impact on wildlife and local rural communities. And this is an issue that has been, for example, challenging the extractive sector for the last 10 or 20 years. So none of these issues are new to this country. We are very conscious of that. So if we are asked for advice, we will of course sit down and have a dialogue with the government and with some of the many actors in the sort of green energy and climate field, because we do have some experience and expertise to offer. But I think the best thing that Sierra Leone can do in sort of taking this debate forward is doing what the President's doing in the next couple of weeks, which is fronting up and saying, actually, I'm leading this. Sierra Leone is leading by example, sort of the green energy sort of provision in the rural communities, the electricity work that we're doing with solar panels, and the aspirations to spread that out further across the country is innovative, it's game changing, and could be really quite an impressive thing to showcase to the rest of the region. As you know, The government also has aspirations around hydro energy, the hydroelectric dam aspirations that it has, which again are showcasing the very best of innovation and potential to show that we can generate energy, we can sustain economic growth, but in a climate-friendly and green way. And I think Sierra Leone's got a good story to tell about that.
We cannot have an impressive domestic policies without the private sector taking the lead in all of these. Have you taken a time off to see what's the overall input of the private sector as economic-led growth, sustainability, and all the rest?
Well, first of all, I agree with your point. I think it's a fundamental fact of life, has been proven in the last 50 or 60 years globally, that without an active, energised and incentivised private sector, economies cannot sustain growth for the benefit of all of their populations. Simple, sort of basic historic fact. I think here we are, I'm very actively involved with speaking to private sector leaders and innovators, and indeed SMEs and people starting out at the bottom of the ladder, getting a sense of what they feel needs to be done in the country. We have a very proactive British Chamber of Commerce, but I know they have an American equivalent, and there's a European one as well. So there are a range of chambers of commerce that myself and my ambassadorial colleagues engage with very regularly, and we share notes, of course we do. And there's a common sense there that the private sector here wants to be engaged in a more proactive dialogue with government. There is a sense that the private sector wants to work with government around fiscal management, which has been driven very much by the IMF engagement, which has been relatively positive, but also talk about issues around access to foreign exchange, talk about issues around respecting legal contracts and, giving companies certainty that when they sign a contract with a ministry or with a government partner or a non-government partner, that it will be respected and not teared up every 3, 4, 5 years. So those issues are real issues that I think the private sector want to talk about. I see my role very much as helping the government and facilitating those conversations and driving that dialogue forward. And I suspect the events of the next couple of weeks with the investment summit, as we move into this year, will be a real driver to see greater impetus of that.
Was there any stock taken on some of the British companies, how much they're doing well in the country? One of it being Myro Agricultural Company in the top colony.
Mm-hmm. I've met representatives of Myro briefly. We liaise with British companies here. There are not many in active, or the ones that are in the agricultural sector. We have a couple of mining interests, and of course others in sort of creative industries as well. So we have conversations with people like that. I wouldn't say I get involved in their day-to-day work, but my job, of course, is to promote their interests as and when I can. I must say the British companies I've come across here so far have been very self-reliant and very self-sufficient and keep us informed, but don't necessarily come asking for help. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and that is a positive thing. That suggests they've got an established relationship with their key partners here, and I hope that continues. What I will be doing in the coming weeks and months, working with my excellent colleagues in the British Chamber of Commerce, though, is stepping back and getting them as an entity, as a group, working closely with other chambers as well, to really generate that sort of private sector voice and dialogue with government, whether it's with the Ministry of Finance, National Revenue Authority, and others, and get that, my job as a facilitator to get private sector to speak directly to government. It's not necessary to act as an intermediary, but I'll be doing a lot more work on that in the coming months.
What are you looking forward to very challenging periods, hopefully anticipated as they are, the period 2023, when the country will be experiencing another general election?
I don't want to necessarily get into the place that my predecessor did, where he was accused of all sorts of things, from institutional coups to revolutions and all the rest of it. And Guy and I spoke a lot before I came out, and he shared with me all the wonderful press cuttings of his face across the papers, and British High Commissioner ferments revolution and things like that. So I hope to avoid that. But as I said to you a few minutes ago in one of your earlier questions, what I really would like to do in the rest of my time here in the next 2 to 3 years is really get to know politicians from all sides of Parliament, from all sides of the House, and understand and respect their positions and understand their policies. Because I think that's what the people of Sierra Leone are after. They're not after adversarial politics. They're not after more confrontation. They're after politicians who have a vision. They're after politicians who look to the future and have a vision of where Sierra Leone will be in 2030, 2040. And they care about issues like climate. They care about issues like clean energy. They care about issues like healthcare, education, girls getting into education. And I want to see politicians from all sides talking about these issues in a mature adult way. It's very easy as a civil servant to talk about this because I'm not a politician. And I have nothing but admiration for people that go into politics. But I think the sense is, not just here in Sierra Leone but in the region and globally, that people around the world are looking for their politicians to be a bit more visionary and talk about policy, not so much politics. And maybe that's something perhaps we can see in the next 2 to 3 years.
Are you impressed with the way the Sierra Leone police is handling community policing, engaging their citizens in the situation where they may want to put up a peaceful demonstration against a specific idea? They may not grant them that opportunity. We used to have a British Inspector General of Police, Abdul. I think he did a lot by way of transforming the police, but there's a paradigm shift in all of those things. What's your impression of Israeli police?
Listen, policing is a difficult business. It's a hugely difficult business.
And he used to be one.
And I used to be one, so I need to confess to you and your audience there is a slight bias in my answer, and I'll be very open about that. Having done public order work in a previous life and having seen firsthand how difficult it is to satisfy anybody who's involved in a demonstration, you're sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't. If you decide to close something down, you'll be criticised. If you allowed it to go ahead and there's trouble, you'll be criticised. So police officers are often doomed to be blamed by any or all sides. I think overall here the standard of policing, community policing and public order policing is pretty good. I think we've had a series of Inspector Generals, including the current one, and hopefully his predecessor will continue this, and senior leadership who are very aspirational to see the Sierra Leone police be a police force that is respected by all sides of the political debate, by all sides of society, all sectors of society, not just in the rural areas but in the municipal areas. And I think they have a real sense of vision to try and achieve that. But it takes time. It takes time to train police officers. It takes time to win the trust of the community you're working in, and that involves getting out and understanding, meeting your tribal leaders, meeting your village elders, meeting your mayors, meeting your local church leaders, and understanding what the issues are in your community. It is a challenge we still face in the UK, and we still often get wrong, but we always try and learn from it and we try and get better. But
does it require patience?
It requires
a bias-free disposition.
I think it requires both, and you've made a really sort of direct challenge there. Policing does take patience, and often that's in short supply. It's in short supply from the public, it's in short supply from the media and from politicians. And I respect that, because you are right to demand the best of your police. That is your job and your duty to do it. What I would say in response, if I was a senior police officer, and I'm not, would be, we are trying our best. We want to listen to your feedback. You need to tell us where we're getting things wrong, but also allow us some praise when we get things right. And there have been lots of incidents in the last 18 to 12 months where the police have intervened in demonstrations and public order situations where actually they've got it right and they've done quite a good job. But of course the media will think about where it went wrong and what they can do to get better, so that needs to be a dialogue that continues.
I'm keen to know whether you've got a taste of our local dishes here.
I have been very fortunate to eat many of your local dishes. I mean, the food is fantastic. If you're a fish fan, there is no better country to be in. Some of the fish is wonderful here, the lobster and the barracuda and other things. So I've been very blessed so far. I'm a very simple man from the north of England, so I'm a big fan of your chicken, rice and beans as well. Simple food, but you've got lots to be proud of here in culinary terms.
Great. Do you manage a little bit of our local franca now?
A little bit of your...
A legal franca?
No, not yet. The local staff in the High Commission are trying their best to teach me, but I'm a very slow learner. But on your prompting, I'll try and get better.
When I look at you, I'm sure you support an Arsenal in England.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Honoring this invitation, being part of this program this morning.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful having you.
See you soon. Thank you.
And this is how I wrap up with my guests. Mr. Simon Mustard, the British High Commissioner to Sierra Leone, who succeeded Guy Warrington 5 months ago. Thank you so very much. This is how I bring the curtain into this edition of the program. My name is Abdul Rahman Kamara. Have a very wonderful day.